Chapter 10, Ethics of IT Organizations. Part 4, International Issues. The learning outcomes include: examine international rules of competition that affect IT companies, investigate how to legally and ethically pursue competition in other countries, describe how competition laws vary around the world, assess recent international rulings on antitrust issues related to U.S. companies, including Amazon, Google, Microsoft, and Intel. When you start looking at international ethics of IT organizations, it gets a little murky. As we have discussed, international laws and guidelines vary, and sometimes bribes are necessary to work within a country. Get lawyers involved, ones who are familiar with international law and follow the organizational code of ethics as clearly as possible. For instance, among many others, Intel has faced charges in the EU, Japan, and South Korea. Qualcomm received a $208 million fine by the South Korean Fair Trade Commission in 2009. And the epic Apple and Samsung battles continue in the U.S. and South Korean courts, which have reached different conclusions at times. Let's take a look at China and Microsoft's adventures as it tried to launch Xbox consoles there. After almost a decade of making them illegally, they finally allowed makers of video consoles to sell products in China, provided they partnered with a Chinese firm. Microsoft struck first, partnering with Best TV in 2013. The Chinese government said that they were collaborating to strategically dominate the market with official hardware, which was counter to antitrust rules in China. The main problem was that they failed to notify the Chinese government as required by law. In 2013, both companies were fined just over $30,000. At one time, Microsoft was also under investigation for antitrust violation with its Windows and Office products, so they delayed the launch of Xbox One. They later formed a legal cooperative agreement with Best TV. Sony initiated an agreement with Best TV as well, seeking to sell their PS4 console in 2017. The Chinese market for video consoles is unique in that most young people play games on PCs or mobile devices in China. It will be interesting to see where the video console market goes in China. Obviously, if you're Microsoft and Sony, you hope to sell your products to the large Chinese marketplace. From 2012 to 2015, the EU Commission was concerned about Amazon's e-book business and whether it was anti-competitive. They launched a full investigation in June 2015. Commissioner Margaret Vestager, in charge of competition policy, said, Amazon used certain clauses in its agreements with publishers, which may have made it more difficult for other book platforms to innovate and compete efficiently with Amazon. We want to ensure fair competition in Europe's e-books market worth more than 1 billion euros. The clauses in question require publishers to let Amazon know when they give more favorable or different terms to Amazon's competitors. Amazon does this to ensure that they receive a good or better price as its competitors. In 2017, in an agreement with the EU, Amazon agreed not to include these clauses in agreements with publishers and not to enforce agreements that had already been negotiated, allowing them to freely compete in the large and wealthy EU market. Let's take a look at Google and some of the lawsuits it's faced in the EU and Russia. First, let's talk a little bit about Google. It's my search engine of choice. I use it multiple times a day for research, for general how-to help, for directions, for shopping hours, etc. It's an essential part of my life. That's not necessarily true elsewhere. Let's start with Russia. Google lost its lawsuit there and is now required to let users choose their default search engine. The EU and European countries have brought multiple suits against Google as well. In 2017, Google was fined $2.7 billion for manipulating shopping results and moving competitors down. The EU found that practice violated EU law and awarded the largest fine in EU history. Google is currently appealing as of September 2017, and if they win the appeal, they will be able to continue the practice of moving competitors up or down. While appealing, they have to change the way their searches rank results in the EU, but hope to be able to change it back if they win on appeal. In 2015, UK-based Street Map sued Google, alleging that its mapping services violated anti-competition rules. The courts ruled in Google's favor in that case, finding that the mapping services did not significantly affect competition. The EU $2.7 billion award could be a sign of things to come. If others find that Google abused its marketing position, then they may be similarly fined. The EU ruled that Google abused its market dominance as a search engine to promote its own comparison shopping service in search results. Expect more lawsuits to come if you're Google. When you're large and successful, people are always watching to ensure that competition is alive and well. We will see what the future holds for Google and lawsuits internationally. In summary, companies must take great care when expanding internationally. Rules of competition vary tremendously from country to country, and if you want to sell your product in a country, you need to follow that country's rules and regulations. If you don't follow those laws, you can expect to have lawsuits filed against you. If you are like Google, facing a $2.9 billion fine, you need a talented legal team who is familiar with the laws of other countries. Giant U.S. companies, Amazon, Microsoft, Sony, Google, etc., continue battles with China, Russia, the EU, and other countries. As they have found, awards may be small, from Sony's $30,000 fine in China, or very, very large, like Google's $2.9 billion fine by the EU.